Welcome to this episode of Author Eke. I'm Travis Davis, your host. Tell us your story. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Author Eke. This week, I have Stephen Ronson, and he is, he's supposed to be in the UK, but he's not. He's in Vermont. So we're going to go ahead and let him introduce himself. He kind of, I think, a World War II kind of buff, and I am too. My dad, I think, read every book on World War II, and he just was very knowledgeable about World War II. And I kind of got that instilled in me also, more from the, Japanese perspective, but he read all, on the European front too. So, Stephen, go ahead, take it away and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis. My name's Stephen Ronson. Just written my first ever book, which is going to come out next week. It's called The Last Line. So as you said, you can tell from my funny accent, I'm from England, and grew up in Sussex, which is on the south coast there near the sea. Now I actually live over in New England, work at Dartmouth College. So
Excellent.
I'm also an American, so I'm an American citizen now. As you say, have become very, very interested in World War II. I think particularly growing up in England, which was, just the English Channel away from mainland Europe, obviously where the troops all went across in D-Day. And there's still so many artifacts there, you just growing up, you didn't realize, but you were surrounded by it all. And I think as I've got a bit older, I've sort of started looking back at that and just wanting to learn more. So
even today, when they're doing construction, they'll find bombs, right? And they'll have to clear the whole town or neighborhood, figure out. And I think at the closest point, was it 26 miles?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's 26 miles across the channel, and you can. I mean, even in the First World War, you could hear the guns across the channel. From all the artillery. So, and you could be even now. You can be walking your dog in the fields, and you'll come across anti-tank emplacements, pillboxes, dragon's teeth they called them. So there's just a whole lot of that still there.
Right.
And actually, the thing that really now gets me is, I'm now 51. When I was born in the early 70s, the men who are the age that I am now, then they had all been at the age of serving in the war. And so obviously as a child, it felt like ancient history, but to the grown-ups, it was just yesterday.
Yeah, I grew up. I was in the Army, and I had, my first tour was in Germany.
Right.
My first tour in Germany was 1978.
Wow.
And I found it odd because you'd walk around, the different towns, and I was close to Nuremberg, the Czech border.
Right.
And there was almost a generation missing of men. It went from, my age to elderly. And there was a very, and I think that was probably the same for the UK, right? And somewhat for the United States, there was a generation missing of young men.
Yeah.
It's like you almost can't even believe it. But your book's a little different. Is it based on the home front more than the combat?
Exactly. So and this is something I was reading actually James Holland's new history of the war in the West, which is fascinating. And there was just a one-line description in there that he mentioned this thing called an auxiliary unit. And what this was, that they took men, most of them veterans from the First War, who knew how to get the job done, who could melt into the woods. Because in 1940, they thought the Germans were just going to invade. It was just going to happen.
Oh yeah.
They swept across France like that with their blitzkrieg, and that channel was looking very narrow. So they gave these groups of men stashes of weapons, and they would go out literally in the woods and bury these weapons. And when the invasion happened, they would just sort of leave their farms and their homes and go and live out in the woods as guerrillas, and then actually lead the fight back as guerrilla units. So my hero John Cook, he's a World War I veteran. He's a farmer in the southeast in Sussex, and he actually goes to volunteer to say, hey, put me into the fight. Better I die than a young man. And they say, no, we don't want you to sign up in the regular army. We want you to lead one of these auxiliary units. He puts together a team and is essentially waiting for the wave of the German wave to come, and in the meantime, then learns about some crimes going on and sort of takes matters into his own hands as a sort of a Jack
Excellent.
Reacher type vigilante.
So now your book or some of the characters kind of
Mm.
based off your grandparents, right? Or
Right.
a little bit having to do with, because they were, my
Mm.
goodness, they were there. I mean, they were there. They were living that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, exactly. And I mean, you said earlier on, when we think about the Second World War, obviously we think of the combat troops, and we
Mm-hmm.
think of Saving Private Ryan and all that great
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But yeah, and actually as a child, I think when I learned that my grandparents had all stayed home, I probably, in a dismissive way thought, oh, you had it easy then. But
Mm-hmm.
the more research I've done, the more I've found. I mean, so one of my grandmothers was an air raid patrol warden. So this, she was a 20-year-old woman running around the streets
Blackout
at
curtains.
night.
You got to have your
Exactly,
blackout curtains.
blackout, and then literally digging people out, and
Yep.
living in London during the Blitz.
Mm-hmm.
My other grandmother, actually, for her whole life, she didn't talk about this. She just told us she was in the WAF, which was the Women's Air Force. But as she was dying, she said to my mother, I was at Bletchley Park, but literally when they shut it down at the end, they said, you must never talk about this for your whole life.
Now,
And so
people
she
that
didn't.
don't know,
Right.
that was where they broke the code Enigma.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was where a lot of today's ability to crack code came out of there. I mean,
Right.
there's some remarkable stories out of that, and some spies that were, double agent and for Russia, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So, and even now, we've tried to get her service records, and we just get the bare minimum. Here's where she was.
Of course, it's all redacted. Yeah, here you go.
Right.
It's all blacked out.
Yeah. And then one of my grandfathers was a painter, a house painter. So they said, well, we need you because, we're losing houses by the minute, so we need you to help rebuild. And the other one was a chef, and he actually did end up signing up in the Air Force and going into Europe after the invasion. But yeah, so none of them were actually in this auxiliary unit, but I can just imagine, that everyone was frankly terrified that the invasion was coming, so they were all doing what they had to do just to get by.
Yeah, 40s, early 1940, and that was before the United States was even in the war. I mean, we didn't get in the war in December 7th, 41, but we really probably didn't show up in England or the UK until 42 or after, to be honest with you, because we were North Africa and things like that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So what we did have quite early on, because obviously back then England was an empire and it had these, Canada, India, Australia, New Zealand. So quite quickly we had Canadian troops coming over, and there's lots of, again, you can find rocks near my house that have got like the graffiti from Canadian troops that were stationed there. So we had lots of those. But yeah, as you said, the American troops, they didn't even know there was a war going on during 1940. There wasn't. I mean, the dates are different for you guys. So
yeah, you were laying onto your own, and I mean, the punishment that was endured by this population. I mean, they the rockets, the buzz bombs, the V1, the V2, and then just a relentless Luftwaffe air raids, and it was crazy. But you guys persevered. It was amazing what the RAF did, and then the invention of radar.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And actually, I'm getting into that in my second one. So I've written the sequel now, delivered that. And so, yeah, looking at, as you say, I mean, the Battle of Britain was then the air war, trying to keep the Germans out, because if they'd sort of destroyed our air capability, then they probably would have invaded. And a lot of that was enabled by radar. So yeah, we were able to get our planes up quickly. But yeah, as you say, I mean, England, I grew up in the 70s. I'm a bit younger than you. So, but even then, England was the post-war England was a depressed economically and, spiritually place. I mean, it was literally a lot of it had been destroyed during the war. So yeah, and my parents were both of the baby boomer generation. So they were born literally the year after, but they talk about growing up playing on bomb sites, and they were sort of, living in prefabricated houses just for somewhere to live with like no electricity, no plumbing, etc. So it's, it was the war literally defined the English existence for like the next 30, 40 years. I mean, it really had aftershocks.
Oh yeah, it's tremendous. So how did you get in? I mean, living there, that interests you is probably growing up.
Yeah.
But what made you write a book on that? And people, I tell everybody, writing fiction, you probably do more research than if you're writing nonfiction.
Yeah. It's I mean, I've always wanted to be a writer. That's ever since I was a kid. Books are just the greatest thing, and I would hold anyone who's written a novel up in very high esteem, because there are so many of us who want to do it. So anyone who's done it, they're my heroes. And actually, I'd spent most of my life wanting to write a book, but excuses came and went. So actually, can I take like 2 or 3 minutes and sort of tell you my story of how I got into writing that?
Please do.
Book? I mean, I was one of these guys who, every new year, my resolution was, this year I'm going to drink less, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to write a book. And every year came and went, and I didn't manage any one of those. And so actually about 7 or 8 years ago, I started a children's book, and I got really bogged down about halfway through. And I thought, what's the most extreme thing I could do to myself to make me finish the book? So I said, okay, I won't drink. So I like drinking. I like having a beer.
Of course.
So I said, I won't have another. No more drink will pass my lips until I finish this book. And the weird thing was, like, weeks went by, months went by, a year went by, and I thought, I didn't get back to the book, but I was finding it very empowering, the fact that I wasn't drinking. So, and the power of that was like doing it every day. As anyone who's signed up for that kind of program knows, you got to do it every day.
Yep.
A year or so later, my dad got very sick with heart trouble, and I realized I got to do some exercise. So I thought, well, I'll do the same. I'll make a promise to myself. I'm going to exercise every day. So I'm not going to have that internal debate. Do I go to the gym today or do I not? I bought myself a bike, put it in the basement, and exercised every day. And I still do both of those things. And those things actually, I think, really taught me that I can change myself. I don't need to just listen to that voice in my head which tells me I'll fail this story. So after I'd read this book, this history by James Holland, where I had this idea of this character in the Second World War that I suddenly really wanted to write, I said to myself, okay, let me just do the same approach. I am going to sit down every day just for 20 minutes, literally, like I can find 20 minutes in a day.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to have that dialogue of like, is today going to be the day? Like, of course it is. If it's a day, I'm writing. And of course I had to do loads of research, but that was fun. And I plugged away. 6 months later, had the book. And actually, my approach was, my initial draft, I didn't do too much research for. So I just had loads of placeholders for like, how much did a beer cost? Did they have telephones? What kind of gun would he use? So once I had the draft, I could relax a bit, and I could think, okay, you're not a failure anymore. You've written a book. Awesome. Good for you. Now let's go and do the really, really fun bit, which is really actually learning about what it was like to live in Britain in 1940, and what it was like to sort of use these weapons, etc. So that was the fun bit after I'd sort of eaten my vegetables of like writing the book.
There's the cauliflower. Eat it.
Exactly.
Brussels sprouts.
So now now I get the fun bit of, and I love it. I mean, I probably started out reading some of the classics that you guys read, like particularly when I watched The Pacific, I went away and read, Eugene Sledge's book, Robert Leckie's book. I'm at work at Dartmouth, where Nate Fick, the Marine captain in Generation Kill. So I've read lots of these biographies and memoirs of men who are serving. And I think that helped me a bit get into the mind of John Cook, who's a veteran. I found a great book by a guy called Edmund Blunden, who was a poet, who was sort of, pretty white-collar poet guy living in Sussex. He got called up to go to the trenches in World War One, and so his memoir of that is very well written, and he was terrified the whole time.
Oh yeah,
as he would be. So I've loved learning, and will continue to love learning. But
Yeah, I do. I enjoy the writing aspect of it. I like the
right.
research aspect, the
Mm.
creativity,
Yeah,
the imagination,
yeah,
but my thing was I've been writing about a year and a half, a
right.
little over a year and a half, and I've got 2 books out. I'm writing my third, and I think the only reason why I finished the first one is because I told people I was writing a book.
Right, yeah, yeah,
They were like, "Yo, how's it coming? Are you done yet?" I'm like, "Oh
right.
my goodness, I got to finish this thing up." So, but I do enjoy that. So, do you have like a regiment other than the 20 minutes a day now?
Mm.
You probably have more of a. Do you
I,
outline? How do you write?
yeah, I did outline, because I knew I didn't want to get discouraged. I didn't want to get halfway through and be like, I don't know what's going to happen now. That would give me an excuse to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. For me, I just had about 30 index cards. Each index card was basically a chapter,
Yep.
so that I could know basically what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I I try to write first thing in the morning, so I'll get up, have some breakfast, and then do that, and then because then I can feel good about myself the whole day. Is awesome.
Right.
Um,
You knock
and
it
then
out.
yeah, exactly, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually, I think I don't know how you feel about this, but I think when we talk about writing, we often think it's like typing. But so I'll sit at the computer for
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes and type, but then for the rest of the day, my subconscious
Yes.
is just like noodling on it.
I'll wake
So
up with an idea.
right, yeah, yeah. So and again, that's the fun bit.
Yeah.
I can be walking to work or walking somewhere else or working on the house, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll be having all these other ideas. So then the next day, great, I've got at least 20 minutes worth of stuff to
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I like to, walk or
Mm-hmm.
go to the
Mm-hmm.
gym in the morning,
Yeah.
um, and then write.
Right.
Like to sit
Right.
outside, listen to music. I can listen to music
Mm. Mm.
and write,
Yeah.
and because I'm fresh,
Right. Yeah.
'cause normally by the end of the day I retired
Mm-hmm.
a year ago last August,
Uh-huh.
and last January I got bored.
Right.
So now that I am a aide on a special education bus for the school district here, so
Fantastic.
I do like 2 hours in the morning and
Awesome.
2.5 in the afternoon. And I
Yeah.
get that break of 5 hours. So that's when I do go to the gym, do my walk, come
Right.
back and write. And some days you write more than others.
Mm-hmm.
I have an
Mm-hmm.
idea, okay, and I want to follow that thought out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do like writing in the morning. In the afternoon I will, but I'm just like, this is more of an idea phase for me because
Yeah.
I'm just done mentally.
And do you plan yours out, or do you kind of see where it takes you?
Well, I do a little bit of both now
Uh-huh.
because they get more complicated.
Mm.
Uh, multiple subplots, to support the big plot, and
Right.
multiple locations, and so now I've got now I got to make sure that if I talk, if I have a character,
Mm.
I need to
Mm.
if the main character or not the main character but a
Yeah.
character, I need to make sure that I engage with them again
Yes.
until I
Yeah.
do something with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm starting to do a little bit more because like you, I think that's a good way to do it. Is you don't, even though you'll change it, you do have
Mm.
okay, and I want
Mm.
to go to here to here to here to
Yeah.
here. It's like a
Yeah.
timeline that you're building out.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I certainly got surprised by things as I was, you sit there in the moment and you do learn new things. I mean, I always thought it was BS when writers would say, "Oh, my characters tell me what they're going to do." But like, for instance, I had quite early on in the book, I had a fight scene blocked out, and I thought our hero John Cook, he's in a pub, he's going to see a bad guy, and he's basically going to have a fight with him. But then when I wrote it, I sort of, they were out in the car park, and I thought, well, right now, Cook doesn't want to have a fight. He actually would rather sort of let this guy get a punch in and just blow off steam and walk off. So I wrote it that way, and I thought, wow, when I sat down, I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I have a hard time killing people in the book too.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the characters. Like, oh shit, I'm going to.
Right.
But I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe just a bad guy, or but
Yeah. I find that's why I end up creating like goons, people who like you definitely they're gonna get got.
You want them gone.
Yeah, but anyone who's interesting, you're like, well, I don't want to waste this person now. So
Or you create a new character. Oh, I want to bring him forward to another book.
Exactly. Yeah. So
and that's what I did with this one. The one I'm writing, it's titled "Behind You, Chef." That's the title. So
awesome.
But it's not a cookbook.
No, have you been watching The Bear?
I did. I love that show.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing.
We have a friend whose son worked not in that restaurant, but they
Right.
use their
Oh,
restaurant
really?
to film it.
Oh, wow.
And he's in one of the episodes. You can see his arm.
Huh.
Yeah, he's done quite amazing from a culinary perspective. But
Right.
the character, one of the main ones in this book, she's a culinary trained chef from the
Mhm.
CIA,
Right.
but
Right.
she's also a CIA agent,
Right.
and she has a unique way of carrying out sanction hits and
Right.
everything
Hmm.
else. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, that
it's
sounds
pretty
fun.
neat how she does it. And I try to look at world events of today or what they perceive or what I could perceive and kind
Right.
of put it in there. And so far, a couple of my books are like, I have to tell people they're fiction.
Right. Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
means that they're good fiction because they believe it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good. So
Yeah.
so your book's going to come out next week.
Yep. Yeah.
So
November the
what do you do
16th.
from a marketing perspective? That's one of the toughest thing I think that writers,
Yeah.
your launch, how's your
Yeah.
launch going or
Yeah. It is
anything?
tough. I mean, one thing, I don't know if you've come across this. There's this awesome podcast called Publishing Rodeo, and they talk a
Oh,
lot about they've got an author who had like the big
mm-hmm,
splashy launch from the big publisher, and then an author who had none of that, and they kind
right.
of look at the difference. And I mean, first of all, I'm very, very lucky because I've got like a full-on big publisher, Hodder in the UK, which is part of Hachette. I mean, in
Mm-hmm,
the UK, this is the same publisher that does like Stephen King and all the greats.
right.
But like my book's a tiny, tiny book
Right.
so they're not. And they actually called me in. The editor called me and said, "Look, I just want to let you know it's not really going to be in any bookshops. There's not really going to be any publicity. Good for you.
They're
You've
waiting
written
for
it."
the other one. They're waiting for the other one.
Exactly. That's what they said. Come back 5 years. Hopefully, we've built you up a bit. But so I said, well, what can I do? And they said, really, it's social media. You've got to get on social media, which I'm not. I'm not an extrovert. I don't do that kind of stuff. But
Right, right.
actually, what's been very effective, I just again developed a campaign. I'm like, okay, if I need to get
Mm-hmm,
like a number of bloggers and reviewers reading my book, how do I do that? So first of all, I got to identify them. So I
mm-hmm,
just made a spreadsheet. I've got a list of about 250
mm-hmm,
bloggers and reviewers who like this kind of stuff.
mm-hmm.
And then I just started messaging them all and said, hey, I've got a book. Would you read it? Um, More than half of them said, sure. So I
Yeah.
sent it to them. And now I've got like 50 who've reviewed it already, another 50 who've said they'll do it by next week. And really,
Excellent.
that's just been me, just bugging people. And it
That's a
does
great
work.
way. I think that's one of the first times it's come up to that scale that
Right.
an author has talked about because it is tough.
Yeah.
Nobody knows you, right?
Right.
Nobody knows your work. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why I started this podcast because
Mm.
when I was done writing and waiting for it to be published, I didn't know anything about
Right.
writing. So I said, what is a better way? Talk to people who've either done it or want to do it,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I found that the writing community itself is very symbiotic.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody helps everybody because I'm not taking your readers from you. You're not taking
Right.
my
Right.
readers, right?
Yeah.
There's enough
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah.
And no matter how big a writer you are, well known, or just getting started, that everybody wants to help you. They'll read your books. I sent some stuff to Ada Adair that
Hmm.
I'm doing an
Right.
interrogation scenes. That's what she
Right.
did. So I said, check it out.
Yeah.
She gave some great
Yeah.
comments. I like some of them. Some I said, I'll just stick with what I am. But there were some great comments.
Yeah. I had a big win early on. What in that? It's funny, on the front cover of my book now, there's a quote that says, I think John Cook is the Jack Reacher of the 1940s, and it's by Damian Lewis. And now the interesting thing is, a lot of people will look at that and think, oh, that's Damian Lewis, the guy from Band of Brothers, the actor. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, it isn't. There's another Damian Lewis who's an awesome historian of
Right.
World War II history in Britain, and he's a very big writer.
Right.
I think he's his new book, Churchill's Band of Ungentlemanly Conduct or something. That's going to be a big new movie soon. But yeah, he's a big writer. He said, yeah, sure, I'll read it. I'll give you a quote. So I
Mm-hmm.
found some people are too busy, they don't reply, but lots of people do, and they're very helpful. Like you, reaching out and offering to do this. And yeah, I love it. To go from not being part of this industry to building a community in a year or so. It's great.
Yeah, I enjoy it. And I enjoy talking to the author. I do all sorts of books, right? They don't have to be thrillers or whatever, fiction, nonfiction. But because I just like to pick their brain because I want to be able to help folks. I think because the biggest thing is marketing, right?
Right. Yeah.
You look at a book, it's a pie. There's cut the pie in three pieces.
Yeah.
There's a writing, the editing, and there's a marketing.
Yeah.
And then how long do you market a book?
Right.
I've been told you market it for 3 years after it's out. I mean, heavily.
Wow. Right.
Um,
Right.
so how do you market? Twitter, what ads work, what ads don't work, where to
Yeah.
spend your money? Because myself, I don't have a finite amount of infinite amount of money. I have a
Right.
finite amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where do I put that? And then where do you do your books? I like doing book signings.
Yeah.
And I found that people walk by you, though, the cover's got to grab you, right?
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
thing. And then being able to engage after that, and then you get feedback. Then what are your demographics, right? If you
Right.
don't know your demographics, it's hard to go ahead and put an ad out.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So I
one
think
thing
that's
I
key.
found is, interestingly, like as soon as I was trying to get a publisher and market the book and they get an agent, they were all saying, well, your book is kind of a man's book, and actually, 80% of the readers are women. But actually, most of the people I've found who've read my book and enjoyed it have been women. So I think
Mm,
sometimes you almost have to believe in yourself and think, yeah, if
yes.
the industry is going to be safe and just play it by what the numbers tell them. But yeah, I think women read Jack Reacher just as much as men, and they like him. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I find a lot of women, like that stuff. The books, that I write, and
right,
because I've,
right,
marketing people. Remember when Coke released the new Coke?
right, right.
Well, that was stupid,
Yeah,
right? And that's a marketing person decided
right,
to do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So, I mean, I don't have a marketing degree,
right,
but I could
right.
tell that was a bad idea.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I think
So
you've got to back yourself.
yeah,
If you believe in your product, which you probably do, you've sat and written it for a year or so.
yeah.
Because if you don't, no one else is going to.
No one else
So
will. No one else will.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
actually. I have an idea for a children's book that
Hmm,
I want to write, but I'm like, I write thrillers. I'd have to be
right.
careful.
Yeah, you
Because
probably need a different name.
it's more of a picture book.
Right, right.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
awesome.
it's a great idea, and I've ran it by a few people, and they were like, "Oh,
Hmm,
you write the book, we buy it."
right, right,
So, and they're not real, not that it's not difficult. I just have to find the time.
right,
But I
right.
already have everything in my head. I have all the scenes in my head,
Awesome.
so I just have to figure out how to get that out of here.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. You ain't no
yeah.
telling. So what do you do? So you do your free time. You like to work on your house. You like to exercise.
Yeah.
Um, do you write outside? Do you write inside? Do you write in a sterile
Mm.
environment? Could you have ambient noise or white noise, or what's your preferred method?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've got an armchair in my house, and I've just turned it so it literally looks out the window. Um,
Mm,
so I'm up in Vermont, so it's a very, I'm looking out across just trees. It's very, very
yep.
rural. So there's not much to distract me there, apart from I get really interested in watching the squirrels going up and down the trees.
Have you ever watched Funny Farm? Have you ever watched Funny Farm the movie?
No.
Watch Funny Farm the movie
Uh,
with Chevy Chase,
right,
because you just described a scene out of
right.
that movie.
So it sounds like I'm a cliche already, so that's fine. And yeah, I always put my headphones in. I always put the
Mm,
same kind of track on, and it just sort of zones the world out.
right.
And yeah, it's got to the point now where I really like when I came to write book two, I sat in the same chair, I put the same music on, and it was like, we're back in that
I'm
world.
in
It
my
really,
space. I'm in my
exactly, I'm
space.
in my
Yeah.
place. My head is in the right place. I mean, I can't, yeah. And if I don't do that in the morning, sometimes I don't, like life gets in the way. I'll
Right.
feel a bit kind of antsy through the day until I've done it, which is a good thing, I think. I
Hmm.
want that feeling. Um, I mean, I aspire to be where you are, where, I'm sort of retired from my day job and yeah, I can build my day the way I want it.
Yep.
But even then, I don't think I would be sitting in that chair 8 hours. I couldn't do that.
Right. Right. I'm
Yeah.
like, if I don't write or do
Mm,
something related to the book at the end
right.
of the day, I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I do, like, even if it's a paragraph, but
Yeah.
that paragraph allows me to think of the next thing I want to be able to
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
book. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm hoping to have my third one done by
Mhm.
the end of January, and then
Awesome.
released fall,
Great. Great.
fall to sometime. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Like, no one ever asked you to do it. No, no one said
Mm,
to you, "Hey, we would love it if you would write us a book." And yet so you've got to be quite bloody minded, I think, to say, "No, I'm
yeah.
going to sit down and do something that no one else in the world is waiting for." but
that nobody asked for me to do.
yeah, no one asked me to do. No one's waiting for it. No one cares. Like if I stop tomorrow, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a weird sort of self-punishment in a way. But no, I love it.
Yeah, better than flogging.
Oh, exactly. Not quite as good for you as training for a marathon or something, but it keeps you sharp.
It's rewarding. I mean,
Yeah,
see your stuff in print and
yeah,
get feedback. So, and that's important too. Is you brought something about people writing and reviewing. You've got to get reviews out on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever, and that's key because that helps with the algorithm.
Right.
So folks, when you do read Stephen's book, go out there, put a star rating, write a paragraph, write a sentence. Doesn't matter. What matters is just taking that 1 minute to click a button. And that's key when you start looking at the reviews, and it helps the the writer to be able to do it. But as a writer too, you better be a little tough skinned, right? Because there's some vicious people out there.
Yeah, I know. I haven't had it happen yet, but yeah, you must. I mean, yeah.
Now you gotta be ready.
I don't know how I'm to deal with it, but
you gotta be ready.
Yeah.
So great. Well, Stephen, tell us the name of your book. Where can people get a hold of you? And all the information.
Awesome. So the book is called The Last Line, by Stephen Ronson. The easiest place is Amazon, and it's available in the US from November on Kindle and audio, and then coming next spring, I think the hardcover and then the paperback will be out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we wish you the best success with the launch of your book, because that's a big deal. I mean, people. It's a different feeling, even if nobody reads it.
I'm excited. I got the message today, the shipping message from the publisher saying that a box of books is literally exists and it's on the way to me. So
excellent.
I'm very, very, very crazily excited.
Excellent. And again, I think I've read a lot of World War II and everything. I don't know if I've ever read anything the home front.
Right.
You go into the combat aspect of it or something, but not really what. If the invasion had happened, how would have England withstood and survived? And the reason is because people love their country.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why it's hard to take over a country. People love their typically people love their country.
They'll do whatever it takes.
Exactly. Well, Stephen, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Travis.
And I wish you the best success.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward for this book and then the second one.
Awesome. Yeah, watch this space.
Yeah. Where can people? Twitter? Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm on
Facebook?
Twitter. Stephen Ronson, Stephen Ronson Author on Instagram. I think Stephen Ronson Author on Facebook. I know I need to get one of those websites. I haven't done that yet, but look, Google me. Google, Stephen Ronson, The Last Line. If you Google that, you'll find me.
Excellent. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. And again, folks, we didn't even have any interpreters. We understood each other English pretty darn well. So we did pretty good.
Thanks, Travis.
You're Americanized though, so you're good.
Exactly. Yeah. I can behave.
Oh, I went to London a couple of years ago for a meeting, and I stayed at the White House by I forget in England, and I walked all the way down to Buckingham Palace.
Right.
I forget what street it was, but it was a fantastic place. And, sometimes folks would say something to me, I'm like,
say that again.
Yeah. And I'm sure when I was saying something, they were like, where are you from?
Yeah.
So, but I love it. And again, thank you very much, folks. Check him out. The book's going to be out next week. Connect with him through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Wait for his webpage to come up. I'm sure he's going to get right on that. So excellent. Stephen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you for listening to Author Eke. There'll be another episode next week. Please stop by and start your own story. We can't wait to hear it.